Welcome to On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life. Come with us as we connect the pro-life movement's past to present, uncover hidden or forgotten history, and its connections to the battle still raging today. Now, here's our host, Danielle Underwood.
Hi, and welcome back to On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life. I'm Danielle Underwood, your host. Today, we're in the podcast studio with our featured speakers for this year's KFL banquets. Dynamic mother-daughter duo, Rachel Campos-Duffy and Evita Duffy-Alfonso. Rachel Campos-Duffy is a Fox & Friends weekend host, New York Times bestselling author, wife of U.S. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, and a mother of 9. Evita Duffy-Alfonso is a rising conservative star, Rachel and Sean's eldest daughter, and host of the Bongino Report Early Edition daily podcast. She headlines Dan Bongino's newest independent journalism project, Silverlock Media. Well, we are thrilled to have you both here as our featured speakers at this year's KFL banquets. Is it true that this is your first time presenting on a stage together for something like this?
Yeah, I think it is, actually.
It is, which we're excited about.
Yeah, we've done podcasts together, but not given a speech.
TV interviews together.
We sure have.
But never a speech.
So what was it like preparing for this, to talk about this very important topic as, you know, on a stage in front of 800 people? What was that like?
Not so unusual because Evita and I get on the phone a lot and talk about a lot of issues. She's very interested in the world. She's very interested in politics, especially culture. And the benefit of having a daughter as smart, but also as young as Evita, she's 25, is, you know, look, I'm 53 years old, and you lose touch with what's going on with that younger generation. And so I always feel like I'm really up to date. Like when we're doing Fox and Friends, I'm introducing ideas and things that are happening in culture, not because I'm so clever, but because I'm in touch with what Evita is talking to me about. And she's very much has her pulse on her generation and on social media, because so much of what's happening in her generation is happening on social media, and just sort of what's happening culturally, which, as much as abortion is a political issue, it is first and foremost a cultural issue. Culture always leads in politics. It's what drives politics. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, and Evita can talk about it a little bit more because it's certainly her area of strength, is what is happening in youth culture in terms of the culture of life. And I think there's some really positive signs.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we talk on the phone all the time. She's right about that, and I really value your wisdom. I might have some little cultural insights about Zoomers, but I come to her all the time with questions of, what do you think of this? And so it was really easy to prepare for this because we had multiple phone calls, and then we kind of threw it together, and then we fine-tuned it, and it was really natural, actually.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, and I've listened to your podcast as well. You're very knowledgeable about,
Thank you.
Yes, culturally and politics. You're raising an amazing group of young humans.
She has the #1 new podcast
2024
for 2024.
So exciting.
So and there's a lot of competition out there, so we're really proud of her.
Yeah, I beat out the true crimers, which is hard.
She beat Sean Hannity, but we won't say anything. I won't tell Sean.
No kidding. That's fun. Well, yeah, and I think this is probably the first time we've gotten to do this kind of intergenerational, featured speaker duo too. I mean, mother-daughter duo is fun in and of itself, but I mean, it's just getting to hear from two different parts of, our age spectrum, and kind of seeing I think you're going to bring a really fun dynamic to this. So we're excited to hear from you. So Rachel, one of the reasons we first got excited about inviting you to Kansas as our speaker was your story about your youngest child, Valentina, who we absolutely adore. We've been watching you all through social media and just are in love with her. And so I don't know if you would like to introduce her to our viewers and listeners who maybe aren't familiar with her.
Yeah, and during the speech, by the way, we are going to talk about her. We actually have some cute social media clips that I've posted of her. And I do that because I think that this population is vulnerable. And they're vulnerable. Valentina, for those who don't know, she's a 5-year-old. She's our youngest of 9, and she has Down syndrome. She was born with that chromosomal, I guess you could say, difference than the rest of us. But it has not changed her humanity. She's still a human, and she's as human as any of the others. And yet, in our culture, she is vulnerable. Her population, her cohorts who are also, diagnosed with Down syndrome, most of them do not survive this diagnoses. An estimate of about 90% in America, they say somewhere between 70 and 90% are aborted. The figures are hard to wrap our heads around because, and grasp, because they're not accounted for, but we know that. In Europe, where there is less stigma around aborting someone who the world deems imperfect, physically and mentally, we have entire countries like Iceland where literally some years no one is born with Down syndrome, and it isn't because they, found a cure for Down syndrome. There is no cure for it. It is because they are exterminated. It's eugenics. It's frankly a genocide. And so I make an effort to put her out there. It's interesting. Just as we got on the plane today, I got a text message from a woman that I know at my kid's school. And she had a diagnosis of a baby she was going to have last year. Found out that the baby was going to have Down syndrome, and her family celebrated. And she said the reason we celebrated was because we knew Valentina, and you had demonstrated that she was not only a great kid and fun to be around, but that she actually made your family better. And we were actually looking forward to it. Now, sadly, that person lost her baby in the end, but happened to write me today to say, I just wanted you to know how much that meant to me that you talked about that. And she actually provided me with a bunch of resources of things that of websites that she had been into and reading to help prepare her for having a child with Downs. But it's not a death sentence. There's this fear that these genetic counselors put into people, saying basically your marriage will fall apart, your family will be ruined. It's the opposite. Evita, I'll let you jump in here, but she's the only thing we agree on. She is the favorite family member among everybody. There's just the fear around it just does not match the reality.
Well, what's shocking to me is how many of them are aborted. In the United States, it's anywhere between 60 to 90. In Denmark, it's 98. So, I mean, it's virtually percent aborted. So it's basically extermination. And it is modern day eugenics. And people don't talk about the history of that. But the founder of Planned Parenthood was a eugenicist. So I wish that a lot of leftists who claim to care, pro-abortion activists who claim to care about people who have disabilities would pay more attention to this issue, because it's so obviously a human rights issue.
Yeah, I often say she's, the world would say she's not perfect. But I would say that Valentina is perfecting our family in ways that we had no idea would happen. And you see it in the little ones. Everyone's a little more patient. When she's around, sort of the troubles of the world go away, because she's in the moment at all moments. And boy, with all the distractions that we have in our life, there could be nothing better to have on a daily basis.
So one of the pieces of legislation that we're championing in our state legislature this year is to provide information to families that do receive a prenatal or postnatal diagnosis, so that they have that kind of circle of support around them. And just like you're saying, they're getting connected with other families, they're getting connected with that information to remove that fear factor, so that they can welcome that child with open arms into their family and into this world. They make the whole world better. It's not just the family. Sure do. They make the whole world better.
They sure do. And I've talked to so many moms who've said that not only when they got the diagnoses did they get like sad news from, like, it was presented to them as this, tragic, sad news to them from their doctors and the nurses or the genetic counselors, but also at delivery. I mean, we really need to change that. Now, I did not have that experience. I was lucky. I was very open about the fact that she was going to have Down syndrome. I'm a public figure, and that was very well known. But our community had a group that when a child is, if they are know about it, they will receive I got this beautiful box, gorgeous box, and it was filled with all kinds of stuff, sort of celebrating. And I feel so sad for the moms in our country that aren't getting that. And I think that that's a direction that the pro-life movement needs to move in, and make sure that every community, every child that has that diagnosis is not just welcomed by her family or his family, but by a community that says this is a cause for celebration.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to switch gears here for just a second. That's a beautiful story. I'm so glad you shared all of that with us, and I can't wait to hear more from you all about it tonight. But I'm wondering, Evita, so growing up in a large pro-life family, even before Valentina, you were pro-life from the beginning. You welcomed every child with open arms. Growing up with Rachel and Sean as your parents, what was it like to see those values lived out daily? And how did that influence your own stance on life issues today?
Well, I do think that there is a culture that is very anti-life, also anti-marriage, and a lot of people are afraid of starting a marriage or of having kids because they are afraid. They don't know what it's like. And I feel like I've had a front row seat to that. Right? I have lots of little siblings. I've, babysat them from a really young age, and I love kids. And something that I noticed between myself and some of my friends who have maybe only one sibling, or they were an only child, is it's not as fun going home, and I, for holidays or birthdays or whatever celebration, it is such a joy to come home to a family that is as large and happy as ours, because my parents were so open to life. And I'm so grateful every day for every single one of my siblings. They, something else, we're very Catholic too. We're very Christian. My mom always said growing up, my job is to get you into heaven, not Harvard. Our values were very anti-cultural, I think, than most, but it was beautiful. And I feel like such a stronger, more grounded person because of it.
Evita was married at 22. We have another son who also was married at 22.
Just going to mention that.
Yeah. So, that's also very countercultural.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And I'm very pleased. I never said, I want you to marry young. I said, I wanted you to marry well.
Actually, what she said was, you should prioritize your love life, which is a weird thing for somebody to hear in their 20s, because you think, I'm focusing on school and I'm focusing on my career. And it's not just that you say that you shouldn't focus on those things, but the priority was always around family. And that was always my priority because that's what I had growing up. And so I prioritized my love life. And I'm really happily married at 25. Mm-hmm. So
I give that advice to lots of producers in my building. Yeah. I say it on air. Everyone should prioritize their love life. And I think the culture would be better if we all did that. I think we send a lot of girl boss message.
Don't do anything for a man. But, I think if it's true love, why are we telling women to forego happiness? It's really weird.
Or why are we telling them you can't pursue your career, your education, and at the same time
also have, you don't have to sacrifice.
A love life. Yeah, you don't have to choose one or the other.
Mm.
So,
excellent points. I love it. So, Rachel, you've spent years balancing life with lots of kids and a successful media career. And now your husband, Sean, is an important member of President Trump's cabinet as Secretary of Transportation. And I'm just wondering, how is this affecting your family or changed the way you're managing things?
It's a work in progress. It's a lot. We sort of, Sean stepped down from Congress when Valentina was diagnosed, because we were just like, you know what, our family had been under a lot of stress and a lot of, just not a lot of bandwidth. And we just wanted to, at that point we were ready to just be together more. And those years have been really great. And we wanted to continue that. And then Donald Trump was elected. And it was very clear to us when he was elected that this was going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity, that this was going to be like 1776, that there were going to be things happening in a revolutionary way that were going to shake up the system in a way that it would never happen again. And Sean loved his life. We loved our life together. But he was going to get FOMO. He was not going to be able to sit and watch all of this happening and not have a place in it. And I think he felt like God was calling him to be a part of this. And so we've made a lot of adjustments. He has just, gotten a place in DC. So he's during the week for the most part there. And then he comes on the weekends with us. And it's a sacrifice. I'm not going to lie. It's a sacrifice. And it means I have to sacrifice in terms of things that I might do professionally. But I think that what the chance that we have as a nation to move a lot of things forward, it's beyond the budget. I mean, if we talk about the budget, where the budget meets this issue that we're talking about, pro-life issues, I'm really encouraged. I see that over the last, I don't know how many years, at least several decades, we've accepted that our government is going to fund abortion through Planned Parenthood. And I don't care if Planned Parenthood says that they're not using it on abortion. That money is fungible. And if they're not using it towards promoting abortion, it's allowing them to have the money to do it, because we're subsidizing other things within their operation, which is a death mill. That's what it is.
I mention that some of the other things are not what you think. It's mammograms, right? And they're actually becoming one of the greatest, providers of transgender surgeries and chemical castration of sometimes even minors. These are things that aren't necessarily related to the pro-life movement. But again, I think we have to be thinking about where our tax dollars are going. And
correct.
Planned Parenthood is not an organization that we should ever be funding with public dollars.
Absolutely. So you see the movement to defund is on the move. But also, I think as a movement, one of the things I've been really encouraged about has been J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance chose as his first public appearance at the Right to Life March. And it was there that I think he laid the foundation, a pathway in this post-Roe versus Wade era. And I think the path for us is family policy. We've already taken it back to the states, and it's up to the states, it's up to Kansas, it's up to Minnesota or Wisconsin and Florida and everybody else to do what they need to do on a statewide basis. But at the federal level, what the federal government should be doing is, if Planned Parenthood can get that money, why aren't our crisis centers getting that money? Why aren't we helping women in need? 80% of women who have had abortions say if they had had just one person offer them support, one place offer them support, they wouldn't have done it. There's a ton of regret around abortion. And a lot of it is about fear of resources. Our government has a role in that. And yeah, I'm a small government person, not on this. We waste a lot of money. There's nothing I would rather see our money going towards than helping women who find themselves in a pregnancy that they are scared and can't and don't believe they can afford. We should be helping them, because those babies are American babies.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we have prioritized here in the state of Kansas as well, in our state legislature.
Yes.
Is making sure that we're directing money to those pregnancy centers that are helping women and families, even women who chose abortion and then later regretted it, and they're helping them in that post-abortive healing process. So there are all kinds of things they're doing to support that whole family and really, again, encircle them with care. I think that the family policy is a beautiful testament to move our pro-life, the whole movement forward, just to make sure that we're supporting women in every way possible.
And Danielle, why are we doing fundraisers? I mean, we should do fundraisers, right? But why are we doing fundraisers and bake sales and they're getting government checks on the other side? It makes no sense at all. This is tax dollars. And this, if you poll people, I guarantee they would rather spend money on a baby than on killing a baby. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's logical.
And it's what women want too, right?
Yes.
Most of them want to actually carry their babies to term. And so that gives them the option.
Yes. So, Evita, let's tap into your generational knowledge here for a second. You are a young voice in conservative media, and I'm just wondering what you think the biggest obstacles are right now for the pro-life movement, especially among Gen Z, on college campuses, and on social media. What do you think?
Well, I don't know about obstacles. I'm going to tell you, I'm really optimistic right now. Like I am very white-pilled. If you don't Gen Z speak for, I have a lot of hope, because I am noticing a massive vibe shift. You can see this in the numbers. Mm-hmm. So there was, especially among young men, a 30% shift to the political right in 2024 compared to 2020. That's a huge number, 30%. We're still a little bit shaky with women, but young men are specifically moving to the right. And when you look at the pro-life movement, right, a lot of times women make decisions about whether they're going to keep their baby or not based on what a man does, right? What's the man in the situation doing? Is he saying, I'm going to support you and stand by you? Or is he saying, I'm not going to be involved?
Or here's $600 and get an abortion.
Exactly. So that plays a huge role. And so seeing young men shift to the political right is a huge deal. You're also seeing, oddly enough, a rise in modesty among young women. It's kind of bizarre. I think young men are responding to the sexual revolution, which really has a huge role in abortion. It's actually, abortion is the center of the sexual revolution. And young men are rejecting it en masse because we've seen the fruits of it. They don't like women. They aren't attracted to them who have embraced the sexual revolution. And so then young women are responding to that. And you're seeing an embrace of trad wife culture. You're seeing the clean girl aesthetic. You're seeing brands that used to sell really sort of raunchy sexual outfits are
like
now
club clothes
are now rebranding and having really conservative, beautiful attire. So there's a lot of things happening right now that make me really optimistic.
I love that answer. That's exciting to hear. And I think the whole trad wife thing has been so interesting to follow.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
Or even the clean girl aesthetic. Maybe you could expand on what that means for those who don't know what that is.
I have not heard of that.
So it's makeup. So
you see this term used on TikTok.
Yeah, it's just sort of another symbol of the vibe shift. Instead of really heavy makeup, which I think is actually very influenced by drag queens, if I'm going to be honest, is kind of going by the wayside, and what's in now is natural, beautiful faces. There is an emphasis on natural feminine beauty, on traditional gender roles and marriage. And I think Danielle, this is because Gen Z has hit rock bottom. We've seen the worst of the worst. Like I have friends who have been chemically castrated and mutilated and horrible thing. I mean, we have seen the worst of the worst, and so I think obvious reaction, it makes a lot of sense, is to embrace traditionalism. And the left right now, they're saying, on the pro-abortion side, they're saying it's fascism, and they're comparing us to Nazis. This is silly.
Those who embrace that
idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're saying really, derogatory things about the rise of conservative traditional thought among Zoomers. And I think it's actually a really beautiful thing and a return to Western Christian values that I think many of us in the pro-life movement never could have dreamed that we'd see embraced by young people again. Like this, even I remember 7 years ago going to YAF events, and it was sort of like, yeah, let's like win the culture war, but there wasn't really a lot of hope around it. It was sort of fleeting. And now you're seeing it rise really organically and beautifully.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I think social media and the emptiness of that that's part of the rock bottom, I think, as well.
But social media is where the red pilling is happening too.
It is happening. So I agree. It's a complete double-edged sword. The relationally, I think there's an emptiness that has come from these virtual relationships. And yet through there, we're able to showcase people who have found, I guess, a different way of living. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you're seeing the rise of trad wives. But I think for most people, that lifestyle is not attainable, but people are finding parts of it. So you might find a young woman who is, in school, but is still like, I'm going to make my own butter, like I'm going to return to something that's tangible. There's you seeing just an interest in things that have to do with nature as well. So I think it's fascinating, and I think Evita's right that it's natural. It's not astroturf because they didn't want. Can you explain what's happening with the fashion culture? Because I think that.
Let me interject one quick thing. I just want to say that I do agree. I think we're seeing this swing from this artificial reality back to this desire for the real, the wholesome, the natural, all these beautiful things that God created here. Right? It's like people are rediscovering their need for that as a solid foundation and are realizing how shaky that ground is that had been laid out for them. And your generation is absolutely at the forefront of that discovery process. And I think you're teaching the rest of us too to kind of wake up and
notice it.
Can I just add something fascinating that I saw recently? I think that for since the 60s and 70s, the idea of a really good woman, a really a powerful woman is a woman who's kind of like a man, which is very, I think, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? A positive female or a powerful woman would be very feminine, you would think. And I was seeing feminist left-wing women on TikTok saying, I feel like it's really misogynistic that all of these portrayals of women in media or celebrated in culture are very masculine. Like, why aren't we celebrating feminine women? Why aren't those women being promoted? It feels very misogynistic, and in fact, it actually is very misogynistic. And you're seeing not just conservative girls who grew up conservative like me saying this, but even left-wing women are recognizing how inherently contradictory the feminist movement is.
Yes. Yeah. So much to think about just in that one discussion right there. I am wondering, so you're in different places in media. You both have major platforms. And I'm wondering what you think what role does media have in this pro-life discussion? I mean, we know that there are constraints within media, but we also know that has been heavy bias against pro-life conservatives. And I'm wondering, where do you see that shift could occur? Do you think a shift could occur to bring that playing field to a more level place?
Well, I could say, I mean, I've obviously used my platform at Fox and Friends to push and promote pro-life stories. I've always done that. But in a lot of ways, this is speaking to the choir. I'm much more fascinated by what is happening digitally, what's happening online and social media. You're seeing young women. I mean, so you have a medium, let's say TikTok, where now you have a generation of people who are used to sort of telling their thoughts online, right? And speaking very sort of raw about what's going on in their life. Everything from like that they went to the grocery store to what's happening in their family life or their family's divorce. You hear like these kind of stories being told. One of the stories that's being told that is contradicting what Planned Parenthood is telling is young women are starting to talk about what happens when they take Plan B in a very honest, raw fashion.
Yep.
And I think, they're saying what they're seeing when they pass the baby in the toilet, that nobody told them that. They're saying it was alive when it happened. These are all things that
painful
that they almost died. They've almost bled to death.
So you're talking about chemical abortion pills?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So there are videos where women will talk about taking the abortion pill, and it isn't even meant to be pro-choice. It is.
Yeah, they're just telling a story. They're not. Yeah, they're not activists.
They're just telling a story, and in fact, some of them will even say, "I'm still pro-abortion." And these stories are so harrowing that they're inspiring in a negative way a lot of women to say, I'm not going to go through with this. And it's just raw and it's honest. This is what social media does. I'll also add,
and they can't control the gatekeepers, the pro-life or the pro-choicers.
Oh, they would prefer not to have that out there at all.
Of course, but they can't control it. They can control the corporate media, they can control the politicians. But they are not able to control these stories from being told. And the young people believe these stories more than corporate media anyway, because they've been lied to through COVID and everything else. They believe their peers more than the politicians or Planned Parenthood.
Well, they're starting to recognize that they've been bombarded with propaganda their whole lives.
Yes, yes.
And they want to hear, again, back to the real, right? They want real stories, real people. They want to know the truth, and that does give us an amazing opportunity. Yeah. And I think independent media, too, is going to be key to bringing out these stories. I mean, that's going to be so important. It's not a controlled media situation, and so, therefore, let the truth be free and send it out there. So I know that we need to wrap this up for today, so I want to ask you one last question here. And before I ask, I want to say what you were saying earlier about how crazy your lives are right now and how much you're juggling and how much you're balancing. I just want to say thank you so much for making, this a priority. I know that you probably had to move mountains just to even be here in the state of Kansas. And so we are really grateful to you for coming.
I'm grateful to be here. And I'm grateful for the work that you guys do on the grassroots level. I mean, that is the real work actually being done. With people on the grassroots aren't doing the work and aren't banging the doors, the politicians aren't going to listen. And on the political side, nothing will happen. And you guys are also doing a lot of work to change the culture. So the kudos goes to all of you.
I think even Republicans would really prefer to ignore the whole issue. So you have to keep pushing. Nobody wants to say and do what's difficult.
Yeah, no question.
Well, we know that the battles have truly moved to the states in so many ways.
Yes.
Not that, I mean, big things can happen at the federal level. That's still very important.
Yep.
But so many battles are being fought at the state level. And so
Truly.
we have to keep the heat on, or like you said, it'll just go quiet. And we don't want to become like Europe, where we're seeing the horrific things that are happening there, or, just becoming common practice for people's free speech to be suppressed, that they can't even pray silently outside of an abortion clinic. We have to be loud and we have to continue to push.
Yeah.
So
we had that happen here, by the way. I mean, what happened to Mark Houck, all the pro-lifers who were, imprisoned and thankfully set free. What a dark moment. What a dark moment. I mean, imagine if the people in the party that did that to pro-lifers, to activists who were quietly protesting, peacefully praying and singing, and they were thrown in jail for that and the book thrown at them, and put in solitary confinement, some of them. This was so egregious and so outrageous.
And by the way, that FACE Act was meant to actually protect pregnancy centers as well. They were firebombed in 2020.
70 of them.
And no one did anything, but all of the pro-lifers were attacked, and also churches. That the FACE Act was meant to protect churches as well. Those were threatened with arson. They had people disrupting mass and sermons all the time. FACE Act was never charged on any of these people. It was only pro-lifers. So I can't imagine if the other side had won. And
quick plug is that Mark Houck actually sat in the seat that you're in right now.
Did
he was in here for a previous podcast. So
great.
For all of you who are listening, make sure you go back and listen to that episode.
I'm going to go back and listen to that one, actually.
Really good. All right, so last question for you ladies. So at the KFL banquet, you two are speaking to a room full of pro-life advocates, and we're wondering what message you're hoping to leave them with tonight to encourage them in this fight.
Listen, I think that this generation, way more than millennials. Zoomers are so much cooler than millennials. I'm so sorry if there's so many millennials listening. This is a ripe generation for a culture of life. The opportunity has never been bigger to gain ground with a group of people. We are rejecting everything that the cultural left has propagated for decades en masse, and we're looking for something new. What are we going to replace it with? This is where the pro-life movement steps in and fills that gap.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I think there's a lot of hope. Look, I didn't think Roe versus Wade would get overturned in my generation, and it happened through the most unlikely of vessels. Donald Trump, somebody who's, I think he's a pretty transactional guy, but he kept his promise. I felt very vindicated. I had a lot of pro-lifers that, told me they didn't think that Donald Trump would follow through when I was a very, very, very early supporter of Donald Trump in 2016, but I just felt like the system needed to be, shaken up, blown up, and boy has he, and he's kept his promise. We had the pro-life rally, the March for Life I was at, having J.D. Vance make that his first public appearance. So many of the other, Donald Trump surrounded by little girls saying, I'm going to stand up for girls and women in sports, and truly against this mutilation of children. We had at the State of the Union, the joint address just the other day, telling, brought as his guest a mom who had stood up to a school board, who had secretly transitioned her daughter and said, again, this is the work of Planned Parenthood as well, and said, all children are born perfectly. And that applies to children with physical and intellectual disabilities. That applies to children who are being told that they were born in the wrong body and indoctrinated in those things. He stood up for he invited a girl who had been hit in the head by a ball and had brain damage from a volleyball player, and lost her career because of that, because a man spiked a ball on her head. So you have an administration willing to stand up and be an absolute countercultural force against all the crazy crap we've been seeing for the last I don't know how many years, and they're on their heels. The pro-choice movement, Planned Parenthood, they're back on their heels, and we're on offense for the first time in a long time. And we should be making ground. We should be taking ground, knowing that we're on offense. This is the time for us to strike. So that's the message for us to tell the people, the activists, the true heroes, the true warriors on the ground that we're going to be meeting with tonight, that the work is in the state. The work is at the state level. The work is in the culture. And part of it is winning the culture of life for us isn't just about abortion. To be a pro-lifer now means to be pro-woman. It means to be pro-motherhood, because that is something that has been denigrated through language. We just had it in Wisconsin. What did the governor of Wisconsin say? They took out any reference to mothers.
Inseminated person.
I'm an inseminated person. I'm not a mother. They're still at it.
It's pro-America. You can't have a population and a civilization when you're not meeting replacement rates.
Right.
So
absolutely. And so that's part of the message, standing up for motherhood, standing up for families, an economy that works for families so that it's not a burden to have a family. It's an exciting adventure to have a family. And so I think we need to continue on the abortion message, but we need to realize that we are also the bearers of the message of family at the center. And if we had left family at the center of American life, we would have never gone down the road of abortion. So let's return it to the center of American life. We have two really great people leading this country right now who believe in that message and are actually giving us the receipts on that within a month. Yes. So there's a lot to be hopeful for. That's our message.
And you have a front row seat to it all. So
we do.
That's so exciting.
We do.
Yeah. Well, thank you to you both. We're really appreciative, like I said before. We're so excited to have you on our stage.
Thank you.
And we're grateful for you to come to Kansas.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you who joined us for this conversation. If the episode moved you, I'd love for you to do 2 quick things to help us spread the message further. First, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss future episodes. We've got more amazing guests and stories coming your way. And second, share this episode with someone. Maybe it's a friend, a family member, or even a coworker. Just send them the link or post about it on social media. Let's get more people joining this movement so we can build a culture of life together. Until next time, never forget, the pro-life movement is on the right side of history. Stay strong. The truth will overcome. Thanks, friends. We'll see you next time.